Hello. I want to take a moment to talk about standards and Florida standards and where we're going with that. So, when I talk about standards, I basically mean like the benchmarks that the state identifies as what is important for us to teach as teachers in a public traditional school. So, some of you guys might be like, I don't need that information. I don't follow that. Keep on scrolling. This video is probably not for you. Other parents that I talk to, they do like to try to kind of keep up with the public school standards. Either you're going a more traditional route to go into college, or you might go back into traditional school at some point, but you really kind of try to like to keep them aligned. So, big news in Florida last year, so some of you guys may have heard this if you follow it, is that they changed. So we had Common Core a few years ago, and then Florida came in and were like, no, we don't really love the Common Core. We're going to change them and call them the Florida Standards. It was basically Common Core 2.0. They changed a little bit of stuff, but for the most part, it was Common Core. Well, our governor came in this last year and said, hey, you know what? Not loving these Common Cores. Our people living in the state aren't loving the Common Core. We're going to change these up. And they came up with the Florida Best Standard. So this has been like the last couple of years. Last year, I know they kind of rolled out. This year's the first year they're starting to begin to implement them. So if your child was in public school this year, they're getting introduced to it. Next year, really diving deep within it. I personally love the change because I feel like it has created standards that are easy for us to understand and make sense sequentially. Like, I have a beautiful sequential mind. I love a good list. And they've created a really good list out of this. So I was poking around the other day about, because I'm also looking at that, like how is that changing our curriculum? How is that changing what we have access to? We tend to follow some of the more traditional standards here with our hybrid program. So I was poking around the school Department of Ed website the other day, just kind of seeing what resources they've come out with so far for these best standards. And something that I found that I loved, I had to dig deep into like a 70-page document. But hidden in the middle of this 70-page document were, I just dropped it. Sorry, hold on, I just dropped it. These. I printed it out, obviously, and so it's kind of small. But what this is a sequential list of the grade level sequence for each standard. So let me give you an example. This is math that I'm looking at here. So this is data analysis and probability. So in math, there are 5 different pieces. We have data analysis and probability, geometry, algebraic reasoning, fractions, and number sense and operations. So anytime we are talking about math, we are breaking them into the 5 different categories. Like when we plan our hybrid program for math, I don't just say, okay, you're on a 4th grade level, you get a 4th grade book. We actually look at each individual subcategory, those 5 I just listed, and we figure out where the kiddo is in that, and we plan around that piece. So say they're in 7th grade in fractions, but they're in 5th grade in number sense. They're getting 7th grade work in fractions, they're getting 5th grade work in number sense. I truly believe that we have to dive deep and look into the information and the data we have to see where the kids are instead of just kind of generally trying to fit them in that box. So anyway, back to my point. This document, this resource that I found online is super helpful because, so for example, for data analysis and probability, it tells me exactly what needs to be done in kindergarten. They need to develop an understanding for collecting, representing, and comparing data. For grade 1, they now need to be able to collect, represent, and interpret data using pictographs and tally marks. For level 2, they need to collect, category, represent, and interpret data using appropriate tables, labels, and units. So do you see how each one builds on each other? And it gives me, I'm just going to kind of go really slowly through here, this fabulous continuum where it tells me exactly what's next. How this is helpful to me as a teacher is if I'm working with a kid and say we're doing pictographs and they are in a 4th grade level, I know in my head this is what they should be able to do specifically. It breaks it down in the standards with me. What this resource gives me is it lets me jump back to 2nd and 1st grade or up to 4th and 5th grade and see, hey, if they're not getting it, where can I fill in those gaps? And if they are getting it, where can I push it? Also, if I'm the parent of multiple children and I know I'm teaching data analysis, because I can see how it builds on it, I can try to plan an activity that helps me hit all of my kids at once without having to do multiple different activities, multiple different, periods of time. I can do the same thing with all of them and just differentiate between it. So I love this resource for math. They also have one for reading. We'll probably get into that one later. Honestly, I'd love to do a full PD around these reading standards, but if you have ever been interested in how standards and reading skills specifically build on each other and what the expectation is, the difference between, the steps that kids need to become fluent readers, this is a great resource for you also, because it does specifically break down each of the sections. So when we talk about reading, we talked about the 5 sections of math. When we talk about reading, there are print concepts, phonological awareness, phonics and word analysis, and fluency that comes in those early foundational benchmarks. That's like actually learning how to break down reading. So once you have those pieces, this gives you all of the different pieces of breaking it down of what you need to be able to do in order to read. It helps kind of come up with those ideas of what we're doing to teach or what we're listening for when we're reading with our kids to teach them those. It also has broken into, it has spiral standards and progression for the different grade levels for the comprehension piece that is broken down, which is the next step. So we kind of have like phonics and fluency and being able to read, and then we have comprehension, which is like understanding what you're reading. And then your next one is analysis, which is higher levels, which is like being able to compare and work with and analyze literature, basically. So this one, for example, it's for literary elements, which is a huge like reading comprehension piece. It's setting characters, all of those kind of things. It tells you exactly like we talked about in math, but it looks different, what you should be able to do in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, all the way down to 12th grade. It starts kindergarten, goes all the way to 12th grade. It does that for literary elements. It does it for theme. I mean, it just breaks all of them up into that. So again, this is a great, great resource for me as a teacher if I am looking at a curriculum that I want to buy. Does this do this for my students? If I create a lot of my own curriculum, I piece together pieces of different parts that I love of different books to create my own based on the kids. This is going to help me do that. So at the beginning of the video, I told you I was kind of just poking around the Department of Ed's website and found this. And it was buried in like an 80-page document. And you are probably thinking, yeah, because I've got all the time in the world to go also do that. But don't worry, I saved just the chunk I wanted as a PDF, and I am going to upload it to the resources part of my website on Family Learning Alliance. So I will also post it out on Facebook, but then I'll post it on my website too, so that you guys can just click there and download that PDF in math and in reading. If you're looking at it and you get confused and you're like, how can I use this, or you want to chat through anything with it, feel free to call me. I love talking curriculum at any given point. And I hope this is a helpful resource. Have a great day.